Hey guys, welcome to the video for solving two-step equations. So we're in Unit 1B, and our essential question is, what is the process for solving linear equations? So our goal, just the same as the day before, is we're going to solve for the variable. We're going to use inverse operations in order to do that. And inverse operations are basically the opposite operations. So if I have addition, the inverse would be subtraction. If I had multiplication, the inverse would be division. So it's just the opposite. All right, so when we're solving equations, we use PEMDAS in reverse order in order to solve. So we're going to go backwards. So if I have PEMDAS when I'm simplifying something, so I have parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, we're going to go backwards. So the last thing in a PEMDAS is S, which is subtraction. However, addition and subtraction, it just depends, right? It just depends whichever comes first. So this would be your first step. You would do addition and subtraction first when you're solving equations. The next step you would take is you would multiply and divide next. Okay, so you would always add and subtract before you do anything else, and then you multiply and divide. The next thing you're going to do is your exponents. We're not going to really have exponents today, but you did have some exponents in solving one-step equations. And then the last thing that you're ever going to do is you're going to do those parentheses. Okay, so you're going to do it in reverse order. So for number 1, I have 3y plus 9 equals 18. Okay, now, what variable am I trying to get by itself? I'm trying to get y by itself. And remember, we're going to do PEMDAS backwards. And PEMDAS backwards is going to be a and s, so add or subtract. So is there anything I could add or subtract to this side over here in order to get rid of it, to move it to the other side? So I'm going to go ahead and draw my little wall here so I know what my sides are. So your two options here, you can either divide by 3 or you're going to subtract 9. So we're going to subtract 9 first, and the reason why we do that is because PEMDAS backwards, right? You're going to add or subtract before you multiply or divide. So if I subtract something from one side, I have to subtract it from the other side. Cross that out. So all I have left on this left side is 3y equals positive 9, because 18 minus 9 is 9. Once I get to this step, well, I have 3 times y. So 3 and y are attached by the operation of multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, so they cancel, and I just have y equals 9 divided by 3, which is 3. So y equals 3 here. Now, how would I check this? Well, I can check it by plugging in 3 for my y. So I can do 3 times 3, which is 9, plus 9, which is 18. So that checks out. So you can always check to see if you get it right. All right, number 2. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my wall here, my line, so I know where my sides are. So the first thing I would do here is I'm going to add 3, because I want to get y by itself, but I want to add or subtract before I divide or multiply anything. So anything I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So this cancels, and I have 4y equals 16. Once I'm at this step, 4 and y are connected by the operation of multiplication, so the inverse of that would be division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. They cancel. I have y equals 16 divided by 4, which is 4. All right, so number 3, this one's a little bit different. However, you're still going to do that same process. You're going to do PEMDAS backwards. So you're going to add or subtract before we multiply or divide. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to subtract 22 from both sides. Oops, I draw that wall there. So subtract 22 from both sides. That 22 cancels. And then what do I have? All I have left on that side now is, I'm so sorry, I'm switching colors. X over 4 equals negative 10, because 12 minus 22 is negative 10. So now I'm at this step. Now I have x divided by 4. I need to get x by itself. So if it's being divided by 4, I'm going to do the inverse of that, which is multiply by 4. And remember, we're multiplying by 4 over 1. So we're going to multiply this side by 4 over 1. Okay, well, 4 over 4, those are going to cancel. So 4 divided by 4 is just 1. And all I have left on this side is x over 1, or just x. And then I have negative 10 times 4, which is negative 40. Okay, moving on. I have 72 minus 2x equals negative 54. So here, again, I want x by itself, but I want to add or subtract anything first. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 72 from both sides. I have negative 2x equals, I actually don't know this one on the top of my head. I'm going to use my calculator. Never be afraid to use it because it's okay, right? We're not all great at mental math. So I have negative 126, okay? Now that negative 2 and that x are connected by the operation of multiplication. So I'm going to divide by negative 2. So the negative 2's cancel, and I have x equals negative 126 divided by negative 2 is positive 63. All right, moving on to number 5. This one's a little bit different. We have 3x divided by 4 equals 15. Now I want to get rid of the 4 and the 3 because I do want the x by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do, well, the whole thing's being divided by 4. So in order to get rid of that 4 in the fraction, I'm going to go ahead and multiply this whole thing by 4 over 1. So these are going to cancel. I forgot to draw my line again. I'm so sorry. I'm not used to drawing a line, so this is kind of brand new to me, drawing a line. But I do it because it helps. So, you know, why not? So now those 4's cancel, and I have 3x equals 60. And the next step here, I would divide by 3. So I have x equals 20. All right, moving on to number 6. I have negative 9x divided by 3 equals 27. So what do I do first? I'm going to go ahead and multiply both sides by 3 over 1. So these 3's will cancel, and what I have left on this side is negative 9x equals, what's 27 times 3? I think that's 81, but I want to check. 27 times 3, that's 81. Okay, so make sure you put that negative there because that negative 9 is still there. Okay, and the next step here is we're going to divide by negative 9 because it's connected by the operation of multiplication there. So negative 9 divided by negative 9 is 1, so I just have an x left over. 81 divided by negative 9 is negative 9. So there we go. All right, on the next part of the notes, it's all word problems. So I know it's not our favorite, but all we have to do is set it up and then solve it. So let's talk about number 1. 5 times a number less 7 is equal to 13. Write and solve an equation to find the number. Okay, so we're going to begin. Let's talk about what 5 times a number mean. Well, 5 times a number, well, we don't know what that number is, so that's going to be x. So we have 5 times a number, so 5x. And then we have less 7. So that's going to be minus 7, because less means minus. And then it says is equal to 13. So it's equal to 13. So I've color-coded kind of translating that for you. So they asked us to write the equation, and then we're now going to solve it. So now we're going to solve this equation. So I'm going to go ahead and write it over here. 5x minus 7 equals 13. Draw my wall here. Okay, let's solve it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add 7 to both sides. 5x equals 20. I'm going to divide both sides by 5. And I get x equals 4. And there we go. So 4 times a number less than 7 equals 13. X was 4. So basically the hardest part of that was just setting it up. Everything else was just the same thing as what we just did. All right. Number 2, 2/7 of a number is equal to 14. Write and solve an equation to find the number. Okay, well, 2/7 of a number. Well, if I said I had 1/2 of a number, then you would put a 1/2. And then remember, of means multiply. So of means multiplication. So if I have 2/7 of something, I'm going to have the fraction 2/7, and it says of a number, so multiply by a number. So you could write this. However, that is also the same thing as 2x divided by 7. And I'm going to go ahead and write it that way because it's the easier thing to do. It makes your life a lot easier when you're solving the equation. So that's what we're going to use. Okay. Then it says 2/7 of a number, so we got that part taken care of, is equal to 14. So it's equal to 14. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve this. We have 2x over 7 equals 14. Let me draw my line here. Okay, well the first thing I'm going to do is I want to get rid of that 7. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 7 over 1. And the reason why I'm multiplying is because this right here is being divided by 7. So I'm going to multiply by 7 on both sides. So then I have 2x equals 14 times 7, which is 98. And now I'm going to divide both sides by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I have x equals 49. All right, so again, the hardest part was just setting it up. Everything else was everything you know how to do. All right, the last problem seems really long, but it's not that bad. We just have to set it up, right? Once we set it up, we got it. All right, number 3, Jenny needs 60 people for an activity. 20 people have already volunteered. She will also ask each of her 8 group sponsors for additional volunteers. How many does Jenny need from each group sponsor to get the people needed for the activity? You're like, whoa, that was so much information. Well, let's start at the beginning. Jenny needs 60 people for an activity. So for this activity, entirety, I know that we're going to need 60 people. So I know in the very end, we need to equal 60 because we need 60 people. So whatever I got, I have to have 60 at the end. Well, 20 people already volunteered. If 20 people already volunteered, then I know for a fact that 20 people are there. I got them. Okay? And then it also says that she's going to ask 8 of her group sponsors for additional volunteers. So we want 8 groups, and we're asking for additional volunteers. But do we know how many volunteers were asked? No. So if we don't know, that's going to be our x. And the reason why it's 8x is because we have 8 groups, and so for however many volunteers, we're going to multiply that by 8 because we don't know yet. So what am I going to do with these two quantities? Well, I have 20 people, and then I have the additional 8 groups with additional volunteers, so I'm going to add these two things. So these are going to be added together. So I have 20 plus 8x equals 60. Okay, I want to get x by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides. Remember, you're trying to get x by itself. So I have 8x equals 40. Okay, and once I get to this step, I'm going to divide both sides by 8. I have x equals 5. So that means that I have to have 5 volunteers from each of those groups. But that is it for this section, or these notes actually, solving two-step equations. Please feel free to come in and ask questions if you need anything, any help at all.